What's up you guys? In this video we're gonna work on this magnifying glass in 3ds Max and Substance Painter, so please give this video a thumbs up and share it around if you will. Okay, to start working on this magnifying glass in 3ds Max, we're gonna have to use a reference image that you can see here. You can find it on my Patreon page. And in order to start modeling, we're gonna have to create a line because we're gonna use a method that is gonna deliver for us quick results. So we're going to actually create a line like this in order to use the reference image as a guide in order to get this thing right. And when we close this line, we're going to use a modifier that is called lathe modifier, and this will allow us to turn a 2D shape into a 3-dimensional shape. So we're gonna actually bring the pivot to the center of the axis, in our rotation axis, in order to be able to get a good, accurate, 3D shape that resembles the reference image and the shape we are going for. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is gonna be similar to what we've done. This one for the first shape, which is gonna be creating a line that is following the reference image and applying the lathe modifier. The only difference is this one is gonna be a little bit complicated more than the other. But there's nothing really complicated about it, except that we're gonna have to add more vertices, which is the thing that is not gonna be that difficult to do. You can add as many vertices or dots as you want, but just don't overdo it, because there are some modifiers that are kind of recompensate for lack of geometry later. But for the most part, to have a good model, there are kind of a few places that where we can add, or where we need to add a lot of vertices for details. Other than that, we're gonna be just fine. Okay, I'm gonna add a lathe modifier, and we should be able to see a similar result. This is actually a quick way to create 3D shapes and 3D elements if we have cases like these, where we have something that looks cylindrical and it has kind of some shapes and some details kind of that we have to cover, and this method will come very handy in these situations. Okay, we're gonna do the same thing when we are done with that shape. We're gonna close that line and apply the lathe modifier. Okay, so basically we are done with the modeling aspect, or what we can see here as a handle. So also there are some issues with the result that the lathe modifier will give us, which is gonna be some minor problems with the mesh in the center. So what we'll do is we're gonna try to delete everything in the center, and we're gonna actually bring everything together once again. And bring it to a normal state. So we're gonna delete everything in between because there are some issues right there, and it's not gonna be that difficult to deal with. Just delete everything, then cap that gap right there, and inset once or twice depending on what you want. Then actually collapse that to get something that looks like this. We're gonna do the same thing for the rest of the pieces. So we're gonna convert it to editable poly and select the vertices in the center and delete them. Then bring everything to where it was before. Okay, right now in order to create the glass that you can see here in the ceiling or the frame, we're gonna have to use a tube because this is the shape that seems that is gonna be working the best, or the geometry that is gonna work the best for us. And we're gonna have to put it somewhere close to what we can see on the reference image. And sometimes the reference image and the pieces that we created previously are not gonna be matching, so we better follow the geometry rather than following the reference image accurately all the time, because sometimes this doesn't work. Okay, we're gonna convert this one to edible poly, and what we will do right now is we're gonna actually we will try to create the glass itself. So we're gonna use this frame as a starting point, and we're gonna convert this probably to edible poly and detach it, of course, because we don't want to keep it part of the frame. And after that, we're gonna give it some thickness. And in order to do this, we can use the shell modifier. Of course, the glass in the magnifying glass tool is very thick, so we're gonna try to actually see what we can do about that. Okay, when we place it in the right position, we'll convert it to edible poly, and we will add some edges in between, because this glass here obviously is not going to be flat. So we're going to chamfer some of these vertices, or we're going just to add some edges by selecting all the by selecting all the edges, then connecting them together. Probably we're gonna go with 2. Okay, once we're done with that, we'll try to actually make things a little bit smoother, but not flat in the same time. So okay, it seems like the basic geometry that we need to create is over, and right now we're gonna create layers, because we want actually a low poly layer, and we want the high poly layer. So we're gonna go and create 2 of these, and the purpose is, of course, in order to actually create a low poly model that looks like the high poly model, we need to do a process that is called baking. And for the baking process, we need 2 models, high poly and low poly. So the high poly is gonna be, actually we need it to be smooth and highly detailed, and the low poly, of course, you're gonna do the inverse. We want it to be as flat as possible, but we wanted to keep the silhouette of the model. But later, when we go to Substance Painter, we're gonna actually use a normal map after baking, and in order to bring back the details that we lost previously. So for now, we are going to actually work on the support edges. What we will do is we're going to use we will use a tool that is called Swift Loop, which is going to allow us to actually to support all the edges. You can use inset and stuff in order to do this when this tool cannot really work, but in the other areas it's going to be working properly. Basically, this tool doesn't work when we have triangles. and we have to use other techniques in order to get the process of supporting the edges done. Okay, keep holding control in order to convert edge selection to poly selection, and this comes handy sometimes to select a bunch of polygons at the same time that are related to one vertex or one edge or whatever. We're going basically to support all the edges where we think that edges are kind of look sharp and solid, and the other areas will look soft and smooth, of course, because the turbosmooth modifier will ensure that this will happen. Okay, this process is highly repetitive, so there's a lot of, there aren't a lot of things we can say here other than that. Keep doing this until you apply the turbosmooth, and when you take a look, you're gonna be able to get something that you envisioned in the first place. If it doesn't look right, probably you forgot to support certain areas, and you're gonna fix them if you want to. So here we are trying actually to add certain small details that are gonna be actually in the center of this piece and in the bottom, and we're gonna actually need two lines. We're gonna chamfer them, or we're gonna extrude these lines a little bit, push them in, because we want to create those details right there, and I think they're gonna be important. Somehow they add a lot, even though they are not that much in terms of how difficult, how much effort we're gonna actually spend in order to create them. Okay, when we do actually create these little details, we're gonna support the area around them, of course, because the smoothing modifier, the turbo smooth, will actually do its job, and if we don't support it, it will probably look too soft, and this is not something we want. Okay, we're gonna do the same thing here in the bottom. Chamfer those two edges. And we will extrude those polygons. So keep holding control actually in order to convert edge selection to poly selection, and extrude those polygons as you've seen. And what we will do now is actually to support the area around them. Okay, it seems like we have to do actually some minor changes here as well for this piece in the bottom. we're going to support that area as well in order to keep these details in place. Okay, for this one here, it's gonna be very simple. So we'll continue supporting these pieces of geometry, and this area here is gonna be extremely simple. All right, here as well, we're gonna do similar job. Okay, I think we're done with working on the high poly version, and we're gonna actually give all these pieces some nice materials in order to make sure that everything is gonna be fine when we look at them, and we want actually a unified theme that will cover everything. So for now, we're gonna bring the low poly version, and we're gonna actually start working on it. So there are some things we need to do. I don't think there are a lot of things we can do actually, because this model here is extremely simple, and I think we'll keep for the most part we're gonna keep everything as it is, because to be honest, this, as I said before, this model is simple, and we cannot simplify this more unless we want to drive the poly count to a very low point, and this is not something I want to do. Something like this I don't think will look great, but sometimes if our model does not have too many polygons, probably we're not gonna be actually taking it too low in terms of poly count, and this is what I'm trying to do here. Even though here it does have a lot more than necessary, so the problem is with so we're gonna, in order to remove these edges, you're gonna keep holding Control and then backspace. So for example, that glass, that many polygons in it probably is not necessary, because the frame is covering the imperfections of it when we reduce the poly count. So probably that area was fine. So for now, what we'll do is we will actually fix the smoothing groups. So what you will do is you're gonna go to polygon smoothing groups, and you're gonna actually clean smoothing groups and auto smooth everything. And this will allow you to actually have a smooth looking low poly model without using turbosmooth. So for now, we're gonna start UV unwrapping the low poly version, as you can see here, and we'll use simple techniques, and we'll see what we can do here. Okay, right now we will actually try to stitch all the separated pieces using the shortcut Shift S from the keyboard, or just right click and stitch selected from the menu. And actually some of these, most of these pieces are going to be simple and straightforward, so we should not have any difficult time with these pieces, with unwrapping these pieces, so we'll see. Okay, after you unwrap it, you're going to apply the checker texture. You're going to download it from anywhere online. There are plenty of these checker textures. You can find them really anywhere. So after you do that, you're gonna apply the UV the UV modifier on the next piece, and we're gonna start unwrapping it. This one also is gonna be straightforward, nothing complicated about it. It's gonna be similar to the previous one. Okay, when we are done with that, we're gonna jump to the next piece, which is gonna be this one. So probably we're gonna deal with this one a little bit differently. So what we will do is we'll try to actually use the previous method, but I don't think this is gonna give us great results. So as you can see, everything is scattered here, and in an ugly way, not in a way that is gonna be really good to deal with. So what we will do is actually gonna be finding a different way for doing this, and it's gonna be much efficient and it's gonna be much faster. Okay, we're gonna isolate this piece here, Alt Q from the keyboard, and we're gonna try to cut these seams manually. So we're gonna select the edges that we need, and then we're gonna convert edges to seams, as you can see me doing here. So we're gonna convert these edges to seams, and after that, it becomes much more easier. Using the pelt tool, as you can see here, it's gonna be much easier to unwrap these pieces. Also, these pieces on the top and on the bottom, also is gonna be very simple because they are just flat surfaces. Okay, we're gonna make this piece or these UV elements a little bit smaller because we want them to actually match with the size of the UV islands or the UV elements of the previous pieces that we worked on. Okay, for now we're gonna do the same thing it's gonna be exactly the same thing for what we've done on the previous piece, and there is nothing really difficult about it, so we will do exactly what we've done before. Keep holding Alt actually to deselect the areas that you don't want, and you're gonna end up with something like this. And we're gonna apply the pelt method, as you will see, and on the piece that is the biggest, and the planar pieces on top and from the top and from the bottom are gonna be similar. So we're gonna make them flat and planar. Of course, for this piece as well, it's going to be something similar, so we don't have to worry about anything technical because it's going to be the same issue and it's going to be the same thing that we've done previously. Okay, when we are done with the process of UV unwrapping all the pieces, we're going actually to convert one of these pieces to edible poly, and we're gonna attach everything together. So we're gonna attach all these pieces because we want to create what we call the UV template. After we attach all the pieces, we're gonna apply the UV unwrap modifier, and we're gonna get something that looks like this. And our job right now is to make sure that they're gonna be working together to create what we call the UV template. Basically, we'll try to fit them together on a plane from 0 to 1 on a rectangle that that looks like this. And we're gonna make sure that we're gonna use all the space we have, and we're gonna make sure that they're gonna be as organized as possible. So if we can see that there is more room, we're gonna make sure that these pieces are gonna be bigger because we want to use all the space we have. Okay, when we are done right now, we will actually try to bring the high poly version and the low poly version together, because we're gonna work on the next step, which is gonna be actually trying to rename all the pieces for preparation for baking. Okay, the process of naming is going to be very straightforward. So what we will do is we're going to actually give we're going to give the high poly actually similar pieces in the high poly and the low poly similar names, and we're going to add a suffix which is going to be underscore something. This something is going to be, like as you can see me doing here, is going to be HP for the high poly and LP for the low poly. And you're going to choose whatever name you want, like high, low, high poly, low poly. I don't know. You choose the name that works for you. But later in Substance Painter, you're gonna make sure as well that you're going to use the same names. So so Substance Painter can actually tell which one is gonna be high poly and which one is going to be low poly, and it will be able to do its job properly as well. Okay, so when we are done with the process of UV unwrapping, you're gonna go to Substance Painter, and we will actually import our our low poly model, as you can see here, after we export it from 3ds Max, and we will try to work on the baking aspect. So we will import the high poly, as you can see, and we'll change some parameters, as you can see here, like the anti-aliasing and suffixes, and actually the match, which is gonna be by mesh name, ambient occlusion ID, curvature, and the rest of the maps. Okay, so we'll let it bake for about half an hour or something, and when we are done, we're going to start working on the process of texturing. Okay, for this one here, we're going to use actually some smart materials, and this is going to be straightforward. So the process of texturing is going to be very straightforward. So the only thing that is going to be difficult here, maybe trying to actually mess with the parameters of this wood clean smart material. So as you can see, I'll try to actually remove some of the aspects of this smart material, and I'm gonna change some parameters like the color, the base color, and because I want it to be dark brown. Also, I'm going to deactivate some of the fill layers and some of the additional stuff that we don't really need in order to get the result that we are after. So as you can see here, we'll actually deactivate the color channel from certain layers, as you can see here, because we don't need all this stuff. Okay, I'm doing actually some testing here in order to get the color that we are really after and the texture that we want to get. So for example here, in the very basic layer of this wood smart material, you can see that the base color is actually causing us some problems. So we don't really need it because it's not really helping. So I think like this we can actually get a better result. So we're gonna remove some of the things we don't need or deactivate them, and we're gonna change the color on some layers. Of course, the basic layers that are gonna they're gonna help us to get the texture that we really want. Okay, that was for actually the wood aspect or the wooden part of this magnifying glass, and for now we're going to add this bronze smart material, which is gonna be a straightforward one. We don't have to struggle a lot in order to do this. So we're going to select the areas that are gonna be affected, and the pieces that are gonna be part of this. And as I said, there shouldn't be anything difficult about it. For now, also we're going to add the fill layer because we need also to create a material for the glass. This one is going to be a little bit tricky because we need to be activating some display parameters, and we're going to add a channel opacity as well. We're going to add an opacity channel, and this is going to be very important for transparency. As you can see, we will activate that opacity channel, and we're gonna go down right to display setting or viewing settings, and we're gonna choose that alpha blending mode right there, and this will allow us actually to be able to see transparent materials in Substance Painter. Okay, so as we change the opacity value, as you can see, it is going to be more transparent, and you can control it to a certain extent and get the result that you want. So this is actually a good way of kind of trying to get something that looks like this, whether it be glass or transparent plastic or anything of that matter. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want more, go please become a Patreon on my Patreon page, because this will allow you to get all the files and all the materials and all the textures and the alphas I use.